Hey guys, tonight we're not talking about kings or plagues or the usual royal disasters. No, tonight we're drifting through something a little quieter. Something that hums along the back roads of the world. Headlights cutting through fog, the smell of wet asphalt, the faint buzz at a radio tuned just slightly off station. So, go ahead, dim the lights, get comfortable. And if you've ever taken a late-night taxi ride and felt like your driver didn't seem entirely there, or maybe the person in the back seat didn't seem entirely alive, well, you'll fit right in here. Because this, dear insomniac listener, is the story of phantom passengers, those mysterious travelers who seem to come from nowhere, ask for a ride, and disappear somewhere between the toll booth and the graveyard. And if that sounds like folklore, that's because it is. But it's also oddly documented, over and over, from Tokyo to New York, from Karachi to Edinburgh. Now, before we glide into the weird, I want you to picture something mundane, a taxi driver's life. Hours of waiting, coffee cups piling up, the hum of the city at 2 a.m. You'd think nothing could surprise someone who's seen every type of passenger. The drunk, the desperate, the lost tourist who thinks just 5 minutes means crossing the entire city. But every so often, they pick up someone different. Someone polite, quiet, maybe too quiet. They give an address, usually far, often strange, and by the time the driver gets there, the back seat's empty. Ghosts who tip poorly, the universal passenger of the dead. Now, the idea of a ghost hitchhiker isn't new. It's one of those legends that humans seem genetically programmed to invent, like dragons, or the idea that your Wi-Fi will get faster if you restart the router. Folklorists have tracked this specific story, the vanishing hitchhiker, all the way back to the early 20th century when motorcars began to replace horses. Because before taxis, people were already reporting phantom riders, spectral figures asking for a lift on a foggy road, only to vanish near cemeteries or at places where they'd once died in an accident. But tonight's story isn't about old legends. It's about the eerie modern reports that sound like police logs, not fairy tales. And oddly enough, some of the most famous come from Japan right after the 2011 Tohoku Tsunami. The city of ghost riders, Ishinomaki, Japan. Let's float there for a moment, to the city of Ishinomaki, 2011. The earthquake had struck in March. The tsunami that followed erased neighborhoods in minutes. Over 15,000 people were gone. Whole families, entire streets vanished like the sea had just swallowed a page from history. Months later, as the survivors tried to rebuild, taxi drivers began telling strange stories. They would pick up a passenger, usually quiet, pale, dressed normally, and the person would give a destination, maybe a ruined district, maybe a hilltop where a neighborhood used to be. And then, when they arrived, no one was there. The seat would be empty. Some drivers refused payment. Others checked their rearview mirrors in disbelief over and over. In interviews, many swore they weren't dreaming. These weren't half-asleep hallucinations. They had receipts, records, even timestamps on their meters. One university student, Yuka Kudo, interviewed these drivers for her sociology thesis. Her findings? At least 7 separate drivers in Ishinomaki reported passengers who simply vanished during or after the ride, all matching the descriptions of people known to have died in the tsunami. And here's the weird part. When Kudo asked if they were afraid, most said no. They just felt sad. Like the passengers didn't realize they were gone. They were just trying to go home. And a ghost with change for the fare. One driver described picking up a young woman wearing a coat, asking to go to the Minami-hama district, which, after the tsunami, was literally gone. When he told her that, she quietly asked, "Am I dead?" and then disappeared. Now, you might think, okay, folklore, emotional trauma, collective hallucinations, survivors processing grief. And sure, that's the rational take. But the taxi meters still ran, and many of these drivers, out of respect, paid the fare themselves and recorded it as a real ride. Because if the dead are confused enough to hail a cab, who are we to refuse them a lift? But why taxis? Why always taxis, you might ask? Why not buses or Uber Eats or some guy on a scooter delivering ramen? Well, taxis occupy a strange psychological space. They're transitional zones, moving between home and work, hospital and airport, life and death. The back seat is a kind of purgatory with a meter. It's dark, quiet, and anonymous. If ghosts still cling to the routines of their old life, a taxi ride makes perfect sense. It's something automatic, a movement, a return. And in folklore, ghosts almost always crave motion. They wander, they drift, they follow the paths of memory. So maybe it's not that the taxi attracts ghosts, maybe it just crosses their route. Around the world in 80 ghost rides. Japan isn't unique though. The same story plays out in Chicago, in Manila, in Edinburgh. Different names, same pattern. In the Philippines, drivers in Quezon City have told of a pale woman in white who flags them near Balete Drive, a street already infamous for ghost sightings. She sits quietly, sometimes chatting softly, until the driver looks back and sees nothing. And it's always raining, of course, because it's never sunny when ghosts appear. Ghosts have excellent atmospheric taste. In Chicago, the classic version is Resurrection Mary, the blonde in a white dress, seen since the 1930s along Archer Avenue. Drivers pick her up, she asks for a lift to Resurrection Cemetery, and vanishes before they arrive. In London, cabbies used to report picking up gentlemen in old-fashioned coats who'd vanish near old plague burial grounds. One famously told a journalist, "I stopped thinking they were ghosts. I just thought maybe the dead are bored." And really, can you blame them? Eternity's a long time to walk. Ghosts in the database. Now, you might think, folklore, sure, but the age of GPS and dash cams should have killed these stories. And yet, they keep happening. Because humans love patterns, especially spooky ones. Taxi companies have even reported phantom bookings, calls from disconnected numbers, requests from demolished buildings, or trips that appear on dispatch logs but correspond to no real pickup. In 2015, one British dispatcher told the Telegraph that he'd received 3 separate ride requests from an address that hadn't existed since the Blitz. He only realized it after checking the map and finding rubble. Old rubble. And maybe that's the key. Technology doesn't erase folklore. It just gives it new tools to use. If you were a ghost and the afterlife had Wi-Fi, you'd probably book a ride too. The calm logic of the supernatural. Here's the strange comfort in all of this. Whether you believe in ghosts, these stories aren't about fear. They're about connection. A ghost in a taxi isn't out to haunt. It's just trying to get home, or maybe replay the last ordinary act it remembers, flagging a cab, saying an address, sitting quietly in the dark. That's not terrifying. That's human. And the drivers? They're like accidental priests, ferrying the lost across the invisible boundary between here and whatever's next. Most don't scream or quit their job. They just drive, accept it, and keep the meter running. It's the quiet acceptance that's beautiful and creepy, sure, but also deeply human. When reality refuses to stay in one place. Now, skeptics, and they have a point, say it's just stress. After disasters, after trauma, the human brain fills in blanks. A driver alone at 3 a.m., exhausted, replaying memories of a ruined town, might see movement in the mirror and imagine someone there. But if you talk to the drivers, they'll tell you something different. They'll describe the weight in the seat, the condensation on the window, the faint rustle of fabric. These are sensory details the brain doesn't invent easily. So, maybe what we call ghosts aren't the dead returning, maybe they're memories made solid, emotional echoes replayed like an old film reel projected onto reality. And the taxi, moving, humming, alive, becomes a temporary screen for that projection. The historian's detour. As a historian, I should probably tell you that ghosts aren't real, but history itself is full of ghosts, just more polite ones. Every document, every ruin, every old diary is a ghost story pretending to be paperwork. And the